It was a cold and stormy night. The wind howled through the trees, making the branches sway like ghostly arms. Rain poured down heavily, hitting the roof of the Miller family's countryside house. The sky flashed with lightning, followed by the deep rumble of thunder. Inside the house, 10-year-old Lucy lay curled up in bed, hugging her favorite stuffed toy. She felt safe knowing that Max, her golden retriever, was sleeping on the rug beside her. Max had been her best friend since she was 5. They did everything together, running through the fields, playing fetch, and even watching movies. He was more than just a pet. He was family. But that night, something was different. Lucy stirred in her sleep when she heard a faint scratching sound at the door. Max stood up, his ears perked. He let out a low whine and walked toward the front door. The storm outside was loud, but something else had caught Max's attention. He sniffed the air, his tail lowering in concern. A loud clap of thunder shook the house, and the wind blew harder. The door rattled slightly, and Max barked. He scratched at the wooden surface, pacing back and forth. His instincts told him something was out there, something he needed to see. Another flash of lightning illuminated the yard for a brief second. A dark figure moved near the fence. Max's ears twitched. Without hesitation, he pushed against the door with his strong body. The latch was old and weak. With one final push, the door creaked open. The cold wind rushed in, making the curtains dance wildly. Max hesitated for a moment, then ran out into the night. The rain soaked his golden fur instantly, but he didn't stop. He sniffed the air again, searching for the strange scent that had called to him. Inside the house, Lucy stirred in her bed. She opened her eyes slowly, feeling a sudden chill. The wind? No, something was wrong. She sat up and rubbed her eyes. That's when she noticed it. Max's rug was empty. "Max," she called sleepily. No answer. Her heart started to pound. She climbed out of bed and tiptoed to the hallway. The front door was slightly open, creaking as the wind pushed against it. Cold fear crawled up her spine. "Mom, Dad," she shouted, running to her parents' room. Her father woke up instantly. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Max is gone." Lucy's voice trembled. "The door is open." He ran outside. Her mother gasped. "Oh no." Within minutes, the whole family was outside, searching for Max. The rain poured down mercilessly, drenching their clothes as they called his name. "Max," Lucy sobbed. "Come back." The storm was too loud. The wind carried their voices away, and the darkness swallowed everything. The flashlight beams cut through the night, but Max was nowhere to be seen. Lucy's father searched near the trees. Her mother checked the barn. Lucy stood on the porch, her tiny hands gripping the railing. Tears mixed with the raindrops on her face. She had a terrible feeling. What if Max never came back? Far away, deep in the forest, Max ran through the mud, his heart racing. The strange scent was fading now, but he had come too far. He turned around confused. The house was no longer in sight. For the first time in his life, Max was lost. The sun rose slowly over the countryside, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. But for Lucy, there was no beauty in the morning. She sat on the wooden porch steps, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her eyes were red from crying. Max was gone. Her parents had searched the whole night, calling his name, shining flashlights into the woods, and checking the nearby roads. But there was no sign of him. Now only silence remained. The house felt empty without the sound of his paws tapping on the floor or his happy bark when Lucy woke up in the morning. "Maybe he'll come back," Lucy whispered to herself, hugging Max's old leash tightly. Her father stepped onto the porch, his face tired and full of worry. "Lucy, sweetheart, come inside. You need to eat something." "I'm not hungry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother sat beside her and gently rubbed her back. "We'll keep looking, okay? We'll make posters and ask the neighbors if they've seen him." Lucy nodded, but deep inside, fear crept into her heart. What if Max was hurt? What if he couldn't find his way home? That afternoon, the Miller family printed dozens of posters with Max's picture. They drove around town, taping them to trees, light poles, and shop windows. Everywhere they went, Lucy asked the same question. "Have you seen my dog?" Some people shook their heads. Others said they would keep an eye out. But as days turned into weeks, hope started to fade. Lucy refused to give up. Every evening, she sat on the porch, staring at the road. She imagined Max running toward her, tail wagging, eyes bright with excitement. But the road remained empty. 1 month passed. Lucy sat in her room, staring at Max's empty bed. The blanket was still there, carrying his scent. She closed her eyes and remembered the way he used to curl up beside her, resting his head on her lap. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She had to be strong. Max wouldn't want her to be sad. That night, as Lucy lay in bed, she made a silent promise. No matter how long it takes, I'll wait for you, Max. I'll never stop believing you'll come home. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying her words into the dark night. Somewhere far away, Max was still out there. And he hadn't forgotten Lucy. Max ran through the dark forest, his paws sinking into the wet ground. The rain had stopped, but the cold night air made him shiver. He had never been away from home before. He had never slept outside alone. He was scared. He stopped under a large tree, panting. His golden fur was wet and muddy. He looked around, hoping to see something familiar, but everything was strange. The trees were tall and thick, their branches stretching toward the sky like giant arms. The sounds of the night were different too, rustling leaves, distant howls, and the hoot of an owl. Max whimpered softly. He wanted to go home. He wanted to hear Lucy's voice calling his name, but he didn't know which way to go. The next morning, Max woke up to the sound of chirping birds. The sun peeked through the trees, casting golden light on the forest floor. His stomach growled. He was hungry. At home, Lucy always gave him food in a silver bowl. He never had to find food on his own. Now, he sniffed the ground, searching for something to eat. After wandering for hours, Max found a small stream. He lowered his head and lapped up the cool water. It felt good on his dry throat. Then, he saw something move near the rocks, a rabbit. His ears perked up, and he instinctively crouched down. But Max wasn't a hunter. He had never chased anything except a tennis ball. When he jumped forward, the rabbit darted away in a flash. Max sighed and kept walking. His stomach growled louder. He needed food. By the second night, Max was weak. He hadn't eaten anything except a few fallen berries. His legs felt heavy, and his fur was dirty and tangled. He missed Lucy. He missed his warm bed. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound behind him. He turned quickly, his heart pounding. A pair of glowing eyes stared at him from the bushes. Then another, and another. Wolves. Max's body tensed. He had seen wolves before, but only from the safety of his fenced yard. These wolves were big, their fur thick and rough. One of them growled, stepping forward. Max backed away slowly. He knew he couldn't fight them. He had to run. With a burst of energy, he turned and sprinted through the trees. The wolves chased him, their paws pounding against the ground. Max ran as fast as he could, dodging branches and leaping over roots. His heart pounded in his chest. Finally, he saw a small gap between the trees. He pushed himself forward and squeezed through just in time. The wolves stopped at the edge, growling. They couldn't fit through the narrow space. Max kept running until he couldn't hear them anymore. Then he collapsed on the ground, exhausted. That night, Max curled up under a fallen tree, his body aching. He had survived, but for how long? He closed his eyes and thought of Lucy. If he wanted to see her again, he had to keep going. No matter how hard it got, he wouldn't give up. The sun had just begun to rise, spreading soft golden light over the quiet forest. Max woke up under the fallen tree, his body aching from exhaustion. His stomach growled loudly. He was so hungry, but there was nothing to eat. He stood up slowly, sniffing the air. There had to be food somewhere. He had to keep going. Max walked for hours, his legs heavy, his paws sore from stepping on sharp rocks and twigs. He passed through tall grass, crossed a shallow stream, and climbed a small hill. But no matter where he looked, there was nothing to eat. Just when he thought he couldn't take another step, he spotted something in the distance, a small wooden cabin hidden among the trees. Smoke rose from its chimney, curling into the sky. Max's tail wagged weakly. Maybe someone inside could help him. As Max got closer, He noticed the cabin looked old. The wooden walls were cracked, and the roof had patches of missing shingles, but the door was slightly open, and a faint voice came from inside. Max stepped onto the porch and peeked inside. An old man lay on a small bed near the fireplace. His face was pale, and his hands trembled as he reached for a cup of water on the table. But before he could grab it, the cup tipped over, spilling onto the wooden floor. The man let out a weak sigh. He looked too tired to get up. Max's ears perked up. He could sense something was wrong. Slowly, he walked inside. His paws made soft tapping sounds on the floor. The old man turned his head slightly, his faded blue eyes meeting Max. "A dog?" he whispered, surprised. Max walked closer and sniffed the man's hand. He smelled different, like medicine and smoke from the fireplace. The man lifted his hand weakly and patted Max's head. "Well, you're a kind-looking fellow," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you come from?" Max didn't understand the words, but he felt the warmth in the man's touch. It reminded him of Lucy. The man tried to sit up, but he was too weak. His stomach growled just like Max. He was hungry too. Max looked around the room. There was a small wooden shelf with a loaf of bread on it. The man had tried to reach for it earlier, but couldn't. Max trotted over, stood on his hind legs, and carefully pulled the bread down with his teeth. He carried it to the man's bed and placed it beside him. The man chuckled softly. "Well, aren't you something special?" He broke off a small piece and ate it slowly. Then he looked at Max. "You must be hungry too." He reached under his bed and pulled out a small tin. Inside were a few dry biscuits. He placed one in front of Max. Max sniffed it before eagerly biting into it. It wasn't the best food he had ever tasted, but it was food. For the first time in days, Max felt a little better. That night, Max curled up beside the fireplace, his body warm for the first time in a long while. The old man watched him from his bed. "You know," he murmured, "I used to have a dog a long time ago." Max lifted his head slightly, his ears twitching. "I had a granddaughter too," the man continued. "Haven't seen her in years." Max didn't understand the words, but he sensed the sadness in the man's voice. He stretched out his paw, resting it gently on the man's arm. The man smiled weakly. "I think you and I are going to be good friends." Max didn't know what the future held. He still missed Lucy. But for now, he wasn't alone anymore. And that was enough. The days passed, and Max slowly adjusted to his new life in the small wooden cabin. At first, he missed Lucy terribly. Every morning, he would sit by the door, staring outside, hoping she would somehow appear. But as time went on, he realized that the old man, Henry, needed him. Henry lived alone. His body was weak, and he moved slowly. Some days, he could barely stand up without help. He coughed a lot and often ran out of breath. Max didn't understand what was wrong, but he knew one thing. Henry needed someone to take care of him. And Max decided he would be that someone. One cold morning, Henry tried to walk to the fireplace to add more wood. His legs wobbled, and he almost fell. Max quickly ran to his side, pressing his body against Henry's legs to help him balance. Henry chuckled, patting Max's head. "You're a smart one, aren't you?" Max wagged his tail. From that day on, Max became Henry's little helper. He fetched the old man's slippers, carried small pieces of firewood inside, and even pulled a blanket over him when he slept. Henry smiled more often now. He talked to Max every day, telling him stories about his past. "You know, I wasn't always alone," Henry said one evening as he sat in his rocking chair. "I once had a family, a daughter and a granddaughter." Max lay on the floor listening. The fire crackled in the fireplace, filling the cabin with warmth. "My granddaughter's name was Lucy," Henry continued, his voice soft. "She was the sweetest little girl. I used to take her to the park, and she would run around with her dog, laughing the whole time." At the sound of Lucy's name, Max's ears perked up. He lifted his head, his heart suddenly pounding. "Lucy." Henry sighed. "I don't know where she is now. We lost touch years ago. Families drift apart sometimes, I suppose." Max didn't understand everything Henry said, but one thing was clear. This man was Lucy's grandfather. And Lucy was still out there. That night, Max couldn't sleep. His mind was full of thoughts. He missed Lucy more than ever, and now he had learned something incredible. Henry, the kind old man who had saved him, was connected to Lucy. Was this a sign? Was Max meant to find Lucy again? The next morning, Max made a decision. He still had a job to do. He had to take care of Henry. But one day, when the time was right, he would go back home. He had to. For Lucy, the seasons changed. The once green forest turned golden in autumn, then white with snow in the winter. Max stayed by Henry's side, becoming more than just a pet. He was a true companion. Henry's health was getting worse. Some days, he barely had the strength to get out of bed. His hands shook when he tried to hold a cup of tea, and his breathing was slow and heavy. Max noticed everything. One chilly evening, as the fire crackled in the cabin, Henry reached out and stroked Max's golden fur. "You're a good boy," he whispered. "The best friend I've ever had." Max wagged his tail lightly, but deep down, he felt something was wrong. Henry coughed and closed his eyes. "You remind me of the dog my granddaughter used to have. I wonder if she ever found him after he ran away." Max's ears perked up again at the mention of Lucy. His heart ached. He wanted to tell Henry, "I'm that dog. I'm Lucy's Max." But Henry didn't know. That night, as Henry slept, Max sat near the door, staring at the snowy forest outside. The cold wind howled, shaking the old wooden cabin. Max took a deep breath. He had made a promise to himself. He would always take care of Henry. But something inside him whispered that his time here was running out. One day, he would have to leave. One day, he would have to go back home. But how? The next morning, Henry woke up feeling weaker than ever. His face was pale, and his voice was soft. "I think it's time, Max," he whispered. Max tilted his head. "Time for what?" Henry smiled weakly and patted Max's head. "You've taken care of me for a long time, my friend. But you don't belong here forever. You belong with her." Max blinked. Did Henry understand? Henry struggled to sit up, looking out the small window. "I don't have much left to give you, but I want you to have something." He reached for a small box under his bed. With trembling hands, he opened it and pulled out an old scarf. It was faded and worn, but Max could still smell something familiar on it. Lucy. This was hers, Henry said, carefully tying the scarf around Max's neck. Maybe one day, you'll find your way back to her." Max licked Henry's hand, his tail wagging slowly. Henry smiled. "Yes, you understand, don't you?" Max didn't know how or when, but he silently promised Henry one thing. He would go home. He would find Lucy. The wind howled through the forest, shaking the old wooden cabin. Snowflakes swirled in the air, covering the ground in a thick, white blanket. Inside, the fire burned low, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Henry lay in bed, his breathing slow and weak. Max sat beside him, resting his head on the old man's hand. He could feel it. Henry didn't have much time left. Henry gently patted Max's head, his fingers trembling. "You've been my best friend, Max," he whispered. "But it's time for you to go." Max whimpered, not wanting to leave. Henry gave a small smile. "Don't be sad, boy. You have a home waiting for you. A girl who loves you more than anything." At the mention of Lucy, Max's ears perked up. He had never forgotten her. Even after all these years, he could still remember her laughter, her hugs, and the way she called his name. Henry coughed weakly, then took a deep breath. "You're strong, Max. You found me when I needed you most. Now, you need to find her." Max licked Henry's hand one last time, his heart heavy. He didn't want to leave, but deep inside, he knew Henry was right. It was time to go home. The next morning, as the sun rose over the snowy forest, Max stood at the cabin's door. The old scarf Henry had given him was still wrapped around his neck. It smelled of Lucy, a scent he had almost forgotten. Henry lay in bed, too weak to get up. He looked at Max with tired but warm eyes. "Go, boy," he whispered. "Find her." Max took one last look at the man who had saved him, who had become his family. Then, with a heavy heart, he turned and ran into the cold, endless forest. The journey would be long. He didn't know how far home was, but he would find it. For Lucy. The snow crunched under Max's paws as he ran through the forest. The cold air stung his nose, but he didn't stop. He followed his instincts, letting the memory of Lucy guide him. Days passed. Max traveled through icy rivers, across frozen fields, and past quiet towns. He searched for familiar sights, familiar smells. One evening, he came across a busy road. Bright headlights flashed as cars rushed past. Max hesitated. Roads were dangerous. He had learned that before. But then, a scent. A familiar scent. His heart raced. He knew that smell. It was faint, but it was there. It smelled like home, like Lucy. Max's tail wagged wildly as he ran forward, following the scent. He didn't know how, but he could feel it. He was close. Lucy was near. And after 3 long years, Max was finally going home. The town looked different from what Max remembered. The streets were wider, the houses had fresh paint, and the trees were taller. But the scent of home was still there, calling him forward. His paws were sore from the long journey, his fur covered in dirt and snow. But nothing could stop him now. He had come too far. Max trotted through familiar streets, his heart pounding. Every corner, every house brought back memories of his life before he got lost. He sniffed the cold air, following the one scent that mattered most. Lucy. At that moment, inside a small white house, a young girl sat on her bed, staring at an old photograph. It was a picture of her and Max, taken years ago. Lucy sighed, running her fingers over the image. "I still miss you, Max," she whispered. She had never stopped waiting. Every morning, she looked outside, hoping to see him running down the road. Every night, she dreamed about him. Her parents told her to move on, to accept that Max was gone. But deep in her heart, she never gave up hope. Somewhere, somehow, she believed Max was still out there. And then, a bark. A familiar, beautiful, heart-stopping bark. Lucy froze. Her heart pounded. Had she imagined it? She jumped to her feet and ran to the window. A golden figure stood at the front gate, covered in dirt and snow, a worn scarf tied around its neck. His ears perked up, his tail wagging furiously. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. "Max," she whispered. For a second, she didn't move. Then, she threw open the door and ran outside. "Max," she screamed, her voice cracking with emotion. Max barked and ran toward her, his tail wagging so hard that his whole body wiggled. Lucy dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face as Max jumped into her arms. She wrapped her arms around him, holding him so tightly as if she would never let go again. Max licked her face, whimpering with joy. His Lucy, his best friend. After 3 long years, he was finally home. Lucy sobbed into his fur. "You came back. You really came back." Her parents rushed outside, their eyes wide with shock. "It's really him," her mother whispered, covering her mouth. Her father knelt beside them, stroking Max's back. He found his way home. Lucy pulled back slightly, looking into Max's warm brown eyes. "Where have you been, boy?" she asked softly. Then she noticed the old scarf around his neck. She gently touched it, her breath hitching. This was Grandpa's," she murmured. Her parents stared at the scarf in shock. "That's impossible," her mother said. "We haven't seen Dad in years." Tears welled up in Lucy's eyes. Somehow, Max had found her grandfather. Somehow, he had brought back a piece of him. She hugged Max again, whispering, "You're amazing, Max. I love you so much." Max licked her cheek, his tail never stopping. He had traveled far, faced dangers, and survived against all odds. But in the end, he had found his way home. Because love, no matter the distance or time, always finds its way back. And Max had finally come home, where he truly belonged.